At 11:47 on a rainy Tuesday night, someone left an envelope outside my door. There was no name on it, no address, just 3 words written in black ink, "You need to know." I almost threw it away. Then I saw the photograph sticking out from underneath the flap. It was a picture of my father, a man I had not spoken to in 6 years. My hand started shaking. I opened the envelope. Inside was a second photograph, then a hospital receipt, then one handwritten note. I read it twice, and suddenly the quiet life I had built began falling apart. My name is Sophie, and 6 years earlier, I had walked away from my family. At least, that was what everyone believed. The truth was much harder. I hadn't left because I stopped loving them. I left because every time I stayed, I lost another piece of myself. I grew up believing family meant protection. My mother, Linda, taught me that from childhood. She always said, "A good daughter stands beside her family." So I did. When my father lost his job, I helped. When my younger brother, Daniel, needed money for college, I helped. When my parents fell behind on their mortgage, I helped again. I was 24 when I got my first serious job. The salary wasn't huge, but it was enough to give me a little freedom. I remember coming home one evening with my first paycheck. My mother hugged me. Then she smiled and said, "Now things are going to get better." I thought she meant for me. I was wrong. Within months, my paycheck had become family money. Every month, another bill appeared. Electricity, medicine, car repairs, loan payments. There was always something. And whenever I hesitated, my mother used the same sentence. "We're family, Sophie." Those 3 words always made me feel guilty. So I kept paying. I stopped buying things for myself. I delayed my own plans. I even canceled a vacation because my father needed money for his medical treatment. I told myself it was temporary, but temporary became years. Then, one evening, I met Noah. He was the first person who asked me a question my family never did. He looked at me and said, "Sophie, what do you want?" I didn't know how to answer. Nobody had ever asked me that before. I eventually told him I wanted a small house, a quiet place, a garden, maybe children one day. Noah smiled. "Then let's build that life." For the first time, I started imagining a future that belonged to me, but my family noticed the change. My mother noticed I was saying no more often. She noticed I was saving money. And one night she asked me a question that changed everything. "How much money do you have saved?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't answer. She stared at me. Then she said quietly, "After everything we've done for you, you're becoming selfish." I went to bed that night feeling guilty, but the next morning, something unexpected happened. I opened my email. There was a message from my father's doctor. The subject line said, "Urgent, please call me." I called immediately, and the first thing the doctor said was, "Sophie, your father never told your family the whole truth." I froze, because suddenly I realized maybe the money I had been sending all those years wasn't being used for what I thought. The doctor's words stayed in my head all night. "Your father never told your family the whole truth." I barely slept. At 6 a.m, I called the hospital again. The doctor refused to discuss everything over the phone. He asked me to come in, so I drove there. The moment I entered his office, he placed a folder on the desk. My name was written across the top. I stared at it. "Why is my name on this?" The doctor took a breath. "Because your father asked me to give this to you if something happened to him." My heart dropped. "What happened?" The doctor looked at me. "Your father has been sick for much longer than your family knows." I couldn't speak. He continued, "He has a serious heart condition. He has been receiving treatment privately for almost 2 years. 2 years. I remembered every payment I had made during those 2 years. My father's car repairs, my mother's house expenses, Daniel's college emergency. I suddenly felt sick. Where did the money go? The doctor looked uncomfortable. "I can't tell you how your family spent their money, but your father left instructions." He opened the folder. Inside was a letter, my father's handwriting. I knew it immediately. "Sophie, if you are reading this, I am sorry." I stopped. My eyes filled with tears. The letter continued. "I should have protected you." I read that sentence 3 times. Then came the part that made my hands go cold. My father explained that he had discovered my mother had been borrowing money using his name. She had taken loans, credit cards, private debts, and when those payments became too large, she had started using my money to cover them. My father had wanted to tell me, but every time he tried, Linda threatened to leave. She told him the family would fall apart, so he stayed quiet, and I kept paying. For years. I thought I was helping my father survive. I was actually helping my mother hide a financial disaster. I closed the letter. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked the doctor one question. "Is my father still alive?" He nodded. "He's stable right now." "Can I see him?" "Yes." I walked into his hospital room 20 minutes later. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, tired. But when he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Sophie. I stood at the doorway. Neither of us moved. Then he whispered, "I should have told you." I finally walked toward him. "Why didn't you?" He looked down. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of Mom?" He nodded. "And afraid you would hate me." I sat beside his bed. For the first time in years, I wanted to be angry, but looking at him made that anger complicated. Then he reached beneath his pillow. He pulled out a small key. I recognized it immediately. It was from the old family house. "What does this open?" He looked directly into my eyes. "The basement." My heart started racing. "What is in the basement?" He swallowed. "Something your mother doesn't know I kept." I stared at the key. Then he said something that completely changed the situation. "Sophie, before you confront your mother, you need to see what is behind that door." I left the hospital holding the key in my hand. I drove straight to my childhood home. The house looked exactly the same. Same white walls, same front porch, same cracked window beside the garage. But this time, I wasn't coming home as their daughter. I was coming back as someone who finally wanted answers. I unlocked the basement door. The light flickered on. And in the corner, I saw 6 cardboard boxes, all labeled with my name. I stood in that basement for almost a minute without touching anything. 6 boxes, 6 years of my life, all carrying my name. I knelt beside the first one and opened it. Inside were old photographs, my graduation, my first day at the hospital, my birthday, pictures of Noah and me, even photographs of my father watching me from across family dinners. I picked up one picture. On the back, my father had written, "She thinks we're proud of her. But we are also using her." My eyes filled with tears. I opened the second box. Bank statements. Dozens of them. I started going through the pages, and suddenly the numbers began making sense. Every month, money had left my account. But it hadn't all gone to household expenses. Some payments went to credit cards, some went to private lenders, and some went to an account I didn't recognize. I kept turning pages. Then I saw the account holder's name. Daniel. My own brother. I couldn't breathe. Daniel had told me he was struggling through college. He had told me he needed help buying textbooks. He had told me his car had broken down. But the statement showed something completely different. Large payments had gone toward a business account. Daniel wasn't simply struggling. He had been secretly starting a business with my money. I sat on the basement floor, staring at the documents. Then I opened the third box. Inside was a small digital recorder and a note from my father. "Listen before you judge anyone." My hands trembled as I pressed play. My father's voice filled the basement. It was recorded years earlier. "I know what Linda is doing," he said. "She keeps telling Sophie the money is for the family." There was a long pause. Then he continued, "But some of it isn't." I closed my eyes. His voice became quieter. "She has been planning to sell the house." I stopped the recording. The house, my childhood home, the place where I had grown up, the place my mother had always called our family's future. She was planning to sell it. But why? I opened the fourth box. Inside was a property document. My name was on it. I read it again, then again. I couldn't understand. My father had secretly transferred part ownership of the house to me years earlier. The basement suddenly felt smaller. All those years, my mother had told me I was only helping the family, but my father had been quietly trying to protect something from me, my inheritance, my future. The reason became clear when I opened the fifth box. There was a copy of a loan agreement. My mother had used the house as security for a massive private loan, and if she couldn't repay it, the house could be taken. I sat there in silence. Then I heard footsteps upstairs, slow footsteps. Someone had entered the house. I quickly turned off the recorder. The basement door opened. Light spilled down the stairs. Then my mother's voice came from above. "Sophie?" My entire body froze. She knew I was there. But how? I stood up slowly. My mother walked down the stairs. She looked at the boxes, then at the documents in my hands. Her face changed. She wasn't surprised to see me. She was terrified of what I had found. She whispered, "Your father told you." I stared at her. "No, I held up the documents. You did." She took one step backward. And then she said something I never expected. "Sophie, you have no idea what I did to keep this family together." I looked at her. "Then tell me." She began crying. But before she could speak, my phone started ringing. It was my father. I answered. His voice was weak, and his first words were, "Sophie, leave that house immediately. Leave that house immediately." My father's voice was barely a whisper. I looked at my mother. She was standing 3 steps below me, staring at the phone in my hand. "Why?" I asked. My father didn't answer. Then the call ended. I looked at Linda. "What did you do?" She wiped the tears from her face. "I was trying to save everyone." "That isn't an answer." She looked at the boxes. Then she finally told me the truth. The business loan belonged to Daniel. He had made a terrible investment. He lost almost everything. When the lenders came looking for him, my mother panicked. She used the family house as security. Then she started taking money from me. She told herself she would replace it before I ever noticed. But the debt kept growing, and eventually she couldn't stop. I felt my chest tighten. "You let me believe I was paying for Dad's medical treatment." "I know." "You let me believe Daniel needed help with college." "I know." "You watched me work myself sick." My mother started crying. I was scared. I looked at her. "So you made me scared too." She had no answer. Then she said something that hurt more than everything else. "Your father wanted to tell you." I looked toward the basement door. "Because I begged him not to." Silence. For years, I had imagined my family as people who simply didn't understand me. Now I realized something worse. They understood exactly what I was giving them. They just kept taking it. I picked up the property document. "This house is partly mine." My mother's face went pale. "Yes." "And you used it as security without telling me?" "I thought I could fix everything before you found out." I almost laughed. "You had years." "I know." Then my phone rang again. It was my father. This time I put it on speaker. His voice filled the basement. "Sophie, I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. He continued. "I should have protected you when you were young. I should have stopped this years ago." I didn't say anything. Then he told me why he had kept the boxes. He had been collecting the documents because he knew one day the truth would have to come out. He wanted me to have proof, not revenge, proof, so nobody could ever convince me that I had imagined what happened. I looked at my mother, then at the boxes, then at the life I had spent years sacrificing, and something inside me finally became calm. "I don't want this house," I said. My mother looked surprised. "I don't want your money. I don't want your apologies, and I don't want to spend another 10 years trying to make this family happy." I closed the box. I want my life back. 3 months later, the house was sold. The debts were settled legally. My father received the medical care he needed. Daniel finally admitted what he had done and took responsibility for his own debts. And my mother, she stopped calling me for money. For the first time in years, my phone could ring without making my heart race. I moved into a smaller home with a little garden. I planted flowers outside the window. And one morning, my daughter asked me, "Mommy, why are you smiling?" I looked at her. "Because I'm finally home," she smiled. And that was when I understood the biggest lesson of my life. Sometimes leaving your family doesn't mean you stopped loving them. Sometimes it means you finally learned how to love yourself. If this story touched your heart like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Unexpected Life Stories for more emotional family stories, shocking secrets, and powerful endings. And remember, you are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are not cruel for saying no. And you don't have to destroy yourself just to prove that you love someone.